An epic mystery. Did anybody survive the eruption of Mount Vesuvius? You can tune in for that at 9, or you can live stream it at wnyc.org.
This is Marketplace. I'm Kai Ryssdal. While the political news careens from topic of the moment to topic of the moment, we here in the world of business and the economy are focused this week on jobs. There is labor market data aplenty these 5 days, including the biggie, the November jobs report, which is going to be out with us on Friday. One line item in that data set that's going to be of particular note is the number of permanent job losers, people who weren't temporarily laid off, but instead have been let go or laid off from a particular position, obviously permanently. In October, permanent job losers topped 1.8 million people. That's the highest it's been since November of 2021. Marketplace's Stephanie Hughes looks at what's going on there.
Mia Trujillo has been working without a break for 3 decades now. Most recently, that was at a big tech company. But earlier this year, her whole team was laid off.
I don't think anybody ever expects it to happen to them.
Trujillo was able to treat the break as a kind of sabbatical. She traveled some, caught up on sleep, finished books instead of abandoning them partway through. She's planning to rev up her job search in January and hopes to land at a smaller tech company.
You can kind of see your impact a little bit more directly on the work.
The tech sector has been harder hit than others when it comes to layoffs, says Brad Hirschbein, a senior economist at the Upjohn Institute. But he says many of those tech workers are able to find new jobs.
We know that their unemployment rate is slightly higher than it was, but it's still relatively low.
Hirschbein also points out that the number of permanent job losers comes to just over 1% of the labor force.
That's slightly higher than it was right after the pandemic, but it's also right about where it was in 2017 or 2007 or 1997, which were hardly bad years in the labor market.
Also, when seasoning the October jobs report, it's probably good to add more salt than usual. There were strikes and storms that soured things for the month.
I think it's a potentially worrisome trend if it continues for several more months.
Lonnie Golden's a professor of economics at Penn State Abington. He says if the labor market continues to add jobs at the rate it has been, then those job losers will be job winners soon enough. But if it doesn't, Golden says more of them could stay unemployed for a longer time.
It can hurt workers' earnings permanently and therefore undermine their spending and undermine the well-being of a segment of our workforce.
Tech worker Mia Trujillo says her job search will probably take longer than she'd like, and she's ready for the prep to be kind of intense this time around. Because, she says, a lot has changed in technology, even in the last year. I'm Stephanie Hughes for Marketplace.
I'm only a little bit kidding when I say we're going to start a pool here in the shop on how many times a week the word tariffs gets said on our air in the months and years to come. It will be, one supposes, a lot. Much of the recent news, of course, is that President-elect Trump's plans for across-the-board duties on imports from, for now, China, Canada, and Mexico. But President Biden is still in office, and he has imposed some new tariffs of his own aimed at boosting domestic solar manufacturing. On Friday, the White House announced new tariffs on solar cell manufacturers in Malaysia, Cambodia, Vietnam, and Thailand, which, as it happens, are countries where a lot of Chinese solar manufacturers moved after they were targeted by earlier rounds of U.S. tariffs. And there are going to be implications for solar manufacturers and solar installers here, as Marketplace's Henriette reports.
There's a tension at the heart of the federal government's policies around solar energy these days. Noah Kaufman at the Center on Global Energy Policy at Columbia University says, on the one hand,
we want cheap solar because it will lead to faster deployment of solar, so we'll deploy clean energy faster.
On the other hand, U.S. leaders would like those solar panels and cells to be made in America. But for years, it's been way cheaper to import them, which is why the U.S. has repeatedly tried to raise import costs on Chinese solar, only to see manufacturing move elsewhere in Southeast Asia.
Trade tends to be a game of whack-a-mole.
Mike Carr is head of the Solar Energy Manufacturers for America Coalition. He says these latest tariffs could lead foreign solar companies to just relocate again. But thanks to tax credits and other financial incentives from the Inflation Reduction Act, he says, the domestic solar manufacturing industry is starting to get off the ground.
We are talking about, for the first time really in the history of solar, globally scaled factories being built here in the United States.
But a lot of those factories are building solar panels, which are made up of cells, which are mostly imported, says Alyssa Pierce, a solar supply chain analyst at Wood Mackenzie.
Because the tariff is on the solar cell, U.S. module manufacturers who are importing cells from those 4 countries will also face increased costs.
Those costs will likely get passed along, making solar installation more expensive, says Steve Sakala, an associate professor at Tufts University.
And the more expensive it is to do that, the fewer people are going to do it.
And if we really want to tackle climate change, he argues, we should be deploying the most cost-effective solar, even if it's imported. I'm Henry Epp for Marketplace.
Asheville, North Carolina is still picking up the pieces more than 2 months after Hurricane Helene hit. 103 people in that state were killed, says North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services. Tens of billions of dollars in damage. The storm knocked out water and power and internet for weeks. Businesses closed. Something like 12,000 people filed for unemployment benefits. But amid all that destruction, economic life goes on. People still have to pay their bills, including rent. From Blue Ridge Public Radio, Laura Hackett has more on that.
At Grace Covenant Presbyterian Church in Asheville, dozens of families are here to pick up supplies like blankets and baby food. And many are also lining up for rent assistance. Jefferson Bravo hasn't gotten a paycheck since Hurricane Helene devastated the region in late September. He's a handyman, and in the weeks after the storm, he was focused on basic necessities like food and water for his family of 4. Bravo says his savings are now mostly gone. A friend told him about the rent relief program, and so he applied. Today, he's picking up a check for $1,100, enough to cover the month of rent he missed.
We're really trying to respond to the crisis.
That's church pastor Marcia Mount Shoup.
A lot of our folks are service economy workers, and they have not work. So we are trying to take housing insecurity off the stress list.
Her church is using private donations to get people rent relief as fast as possible.
We're on a razor's edge every day.
The church has given out more than $1 million in rent aid. Other groups are helping too, but Mount Shoup says nobody can keep up.
We have a stack this tall that we're working through. You know, we're behind because the amount is a lot. It's a lot.
There is some relief coming from the local government, but red tape slows down the process, says Patricia Cadell, a real estate attorney at Pisgah Legal Services.
It takes a lot of time to get the government funds, and there's a lot more paperwork involved rather than whenever you are just asking for some resources from a local organization or a church.
Cadell says evictions can happen fast.
A lot of landlords are depending on their rental income as part of their income, and they have mortgages to pay too. And if the landlord isn't able to pay the mortgage on the property, it could go into foreclosure.
And an eviction doesn't necessarily mean a landlord will get paid.
These landlords, they could file an eviction and remove the tenants from the property, but the likelihood of them getting that money back is little to none because the tenants just don't have it to pay.
This dilemma isn't new. During the peak of the COVID pandemic, North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper signed an eviction moratorium, and both landlords and renters got hundreds of millions of dollars to help keep everyone housed. But that hasn't happened in response to the hurricane, says State Representative Lindsey Prather.
We need rental assistance, desperately.
The state has dedicated $1 million in rent assistance for the region, but that's split across 39 counties and is not yet available. There's a lot of talk and frustration about this in Asheville, including at Grace Covenant Church. Pastor Mount Shoup says the entire community has been hurt by this disaster.
There's nobody here that wants to not pay landlords. We want everybody to be able to stay in business and get our economy back going.
And she says if workers are pushed out of the community, that's only going to make the economy worse. In Asheville, I'm Laura Hackett for Marketplace.
Marketplace is supported by Bitwarden Password Manager, with a reminder that Cyber Monday can attract cyber criminals. Bitwarden is designed to protect personal and business information on any device from any location. Available at bitwarden.com. And by the Peter G. Peterson Foundation, a nonpartisan organization dedicated to raising awareness and accelerating action on America's fiscal challenges to build a brighter economic future for the next generation. Learn more at pgpf.org.
This final note on the way out today. The Marketplace quote of the day goes to Federal Reserve Board Governor Christopher Waller, who in a speech today in Washington said this, and here I quote, "Overall, I feel like an MMA fighter who keeps getting inflation in a chokehold, waiting for it to tap out. Yet it keeps slipping out of my grasp at the last minute." And he went on, "Let me assure you that submission is inevitable. Inflation isn't getting out of the octagon." Come on, right? Our daily production team includes Andy Corbin, Nicholas Guillaume, Elise Hassan, Maria Hollenhorst, Sarah Leeson, Sean McHenry, and Sophia Terenzio. I'm Kai Risdell. We will see you tomorrow, everybody. This is 8 p.m.
WNYC is supported by